Awesome. We have this meeting recording right now. We are just going to let some folks trickle in here. But as people are trickling in, welcome. Very excited to have you joining us virtually. Amazing. We got 13 people so far. We're going to give people about 1 minute here. As you're coming in, I'd be curious to know where people are tuning in from. Are you in the area, closer to Ashburn? Just look out for the chat here. Hopefully everybody's staying safe and warm, adjusting to these weather changes. Awesome. Well, great. I think we're just going to go ahead and get started now. But thank you again, everyone who's logging on with us tonight. Very excited to be hosting this virtual Ashburn USA Gap Year Fair with our amazing expert, Gap Year counselor Jane Sarouhan. We're also joined by Zack Stone, who is an alumni and has some personal stories and experiences to share with you all. So that's really, really exciting. Glad to have him on board as well. I'm also joined by my colleague, Alyssa Slager, and of course, me. My name is Jory, and I'm the content and community manager at Go Overseas. And I'm just really stoked to be here with you all today. While it's very unfortunate that the weather changes have led us to shifting to a virtual event rather than getting to see all of you in person this week, we're just really glad that your safety is being prioritized and we're still able to find a way to bring these resources to you. But yeah, very, very stoked to be able to share this information with you tonight. I personally took a gap year myself between my sophomore and junior year of college, and it really transformed my path. So I know that, and that's something you will hear from literally everybody. Zack will be the first to say it tonight, I'm sure. Just really passionate about sharing this information, just like everyone else who's here with you today, and to share some tips and resources. So just jumping right in, we are going to be sharing several tips and resources with you throughout this webinar. But more importantly, we're going to be hearing from Jane and Zack, who are the most expert resources on the call. But just before we jump into all of that, we wanted to introduce a little bit about the USA Gap Year Fairs and who they're brought to you by. So the USA Gap Year Fairs, we have been running these events since 2007, and since then we have hosted both virtual and in-person events around the nation. The events themselves are brought to you by Go Overseas, which is a free community-centered resource that you can utilize to find meaningful travel and educational programs of every kind. So whether you're interested in teaching abroad, interning abroad, language schools, internships, studying abroad, the list goes on, you can use our website to find trusted organizations in those categories. And what makes us unique is utilizing our website. You can actually read real alumni reviews written by people like Zack, who have actually gone on the programs themselves. So you have a trustworthy source of information to vet if a program is truly the right fit for you. So that's really great. And moving on to some of the other resources we have to share with you tonight, the Gap Matcher. It's a super fun and quick, easy quiz that you can take just by scanning this QR code right here in the bottom right of the screen. And it's a fun little quiz that will give you some suggestions of programs that you are a good fit for, depending on what your interests are, maybe where you want to go, either affirming some choices you might already have in mind or exposing you to something completely new. So encourage you to check that out. I'll also have my colleague Alyssa share that resource in the chat. And then moving on to another really exciting resource we have is our $5,000 USA Gap Year Fair Scholarship, which just opened a couple weeks ago on January 9th. This scholarship is an incredible way to help fund your gap time or meaningful experiential travel experience. It doesn't have to be a full gap year program. It just has to be one of our eligible programs, which you will find a list of by scanning this QR code. Other eligibility requirements include being between 17 to 20. Like I said, planning to participate with one of our participating programs, either this summer or fall, attending a virtual or in-person fair. So if you're here with us right now, you already checked that off. And oops, sorry about that. I think that is a typo, but that is the requirements there. So you can just scan that code and start your application right now. It's open, like I said. This is our scholarship winner from last year. Another amazing benefit of this scholarship is it also includes mentorship from an accredited gap year counselor. And Hannah was actually mentored by J2 Guides. And Jane and Jason both helped her plan her amazing gap year to Timberline Canadian Alpine Academy, where she is now getting her certification to be a ski instructor. So she's been sending us updates. She's having an absolute blast. It's been really exciting to hear about her journey so far. And as another thank you for joining us at this event today in celebration of exploring global opportunities, we are giving a free $500 flight away. And just for being here, you are eligible to enter this. There's no age requirements. All you have to do is scan that little QR code there on the screen and fill out a quick form telling us where you go with your dream or with your free flight. And that's it. If you invite any friends and family to attend a fair with you, either tonight or later, those will earn you extra entries into this raffle for this free flight. So encourage your friends and family to visit us at a future fair. And another resource that I want to lead off here is the Guide to Global Opportunities, which is a fully virtual guide that you can access right now, scanning that QR code that you can use to search through programs that are virtually tabling with us tonight and see what feels like a good fit for you. There's some really helpful, easy to use filters there that you can use to search by program location. There's also some informative videos and meeting links so you can connect with folks directly through a future calendar or schedule on their calendar. So if you want to get questions answered directly, you can absolutely do that. Definitely recommend checking that out right now. And like I mentioned, we have some upcoming events. We have some in-person events coming up and also some virtual events as well. So if you'd like to join us, you can scan that QR code and see what's on the schedule. Or if you know someone who would love this event, we encourage you to share it with them and help empower them to explore global opportunities as well. So with that, very excited to introduce our keynote speaker of the evening, Jane Sarouhan. Jane has 30 plus years of experience helping guide individuals on meaningful travel experiences of all kinds. We're going to hear so many expert insights from her tonight. We're just really glad to have her. But with that, I'm just gonna pass it off to you, Jane.
Thank you so much, Jory. And you can advance the next slide. And I'm sure, I mean, everyone here tonight was maybe planning to be out of the house at an event, and I would have met you there. But this is actually quite lovely and comfortable for all of us, and maybe even a little less overwhelming than an actual gap year fair. But what I want to share is exactly the same. This is the same slide deck I would have delivered in person. But this gives us an opportunity to actually have a lot more time at the end for Q&A as well. So you should start, as questions come up, throw them in the Q&A. I believe the chat's disabled for this presentation tonight, but if you put them in the Q&A, Jory and Alyssa are going to be monitoring them, maybe answering some in real time, but also Zach and I are going to be doing some able to answer questions at the end as well. So I want to say just a little bit about me, and because it helps contextualize why I'm the expert at this presentation. But really, let's be clear, the gap year is about you and not about me. It's about you or your young adult who's on the cusp of change or curiosity and thinking that there might be a different step out of high school or even during college or even after college. Um, how I came to be part of this journey was very much a study abroad year, which led to a gap year. And what's so funny is before we opened up the waiting room, we were just talking about India because Zach has just come from some travels in India. And that is me, my junior year abroad in India. And I was an anthropology student at Boston University. And this program was a 9 month traveling around the world with 18 students. So it was totally experiential in its heart. Just so much of like what we're talking about with gap year, a bit more academics, of course, but the idea was learning by doing. It was taking the topics of anthropology and ecology and getting into it with local professors and local communities in all the countries that we were traveling in. And I came back transformed, like every cliche in the book. I felt inspired and excited. I felt humbled. I felt confident. I felt more worldly. I felt intellectually really curious. I took a pause and took a gap year then to actually help some friends start a nonprofit out in California and went back to college after that. And as you'll hear me share in a bit, went back and achieved higher grades and outperformed all my peers, which is a very typical I'll say, statistic from students who are taking an intentional gap year is the level of performance you will achieve in what follows, be it work or school, is quite high because of the connection you're feeling to your life and the people and your cause. But anyway, I get a little bit off track here. So you can see my journey on this timeline over 30 years, my own travels, my own study abroad year, my own gap year led me to leading trips. And so I spent a lot of my 20s in the summer leading high school summer programs and ultimately gap semester programs. And they were considered to be sort of Peace Corps meets Outward Bound. So deeply culturally and service-based programs overseas, long-term stays to really develop those relationships, and of course, exploring the environments while there. And I spent a lot of my time working in Africa and Asia and a little bit in Latin America. And it was during these travels that I met my husband. So in that center photo, I'm leading a program actually in Tanzania, and squatting in the front with me is my husband and J2 Guides co-founder Jason. And J2 Guides and what we do now, what we've been doing for 15 years now, once graduating from leading trips, which is an amazing career, but finite but by the time you hit maybe your young 30s. And we're now gap year consultants. And so what we do is really quite similar to a college consultant or college counselors. We're really looking to connect with students in a meaningful way, and understand the totality of their interests, their goals, their aspirations, their fears. And then from the parent perspective, their goals and interests in the time ahead, as well as budget, risk tolerance, and then taking all that information. And then I'm also spending time vetting programs all over the country and the world. And by the end of kind of, moving back and forth between the programs I know and research and the student, and I get to know them better and the back and forth, our job is to then create really a curated list of programs that I think represent what you're looking to get out of your gap time. And that's what we do at J2 Guides is really make meaningful connections with students to help them explore their full potential through these hands-on gap year and experiential opportunities. Let's keep going on. I already spent too long talking about myself. Sorry about that. What is a gap year? This is really a good place to start, and I'm actually not going to tell you the official definition till the end of my slide deck because I want the story to start to tell itself. Everyone who's here has an idea of what a gap year is, some assumptions maybe, fueled by friends or neighbors or relatives who've taken gap time. And it's really easy to make some assumptions. Maybe it's has to be overseas, or it has to be after high school, or it has to be a full year. I'm going to tell you right now that our definition does not include any of those things. So you place yourself in this photo, kind of standing on the cusp again of being able to go in a few directions and thinking about what is it, why is it that you're standing here wondering what could be out there for you? And that will be your gap year. It will not look like anybody else's. It will not fit into anyone else's box or definition, but it will be about you taking intentional time away from what you're currently doing, probably academics, maybe not, in order to just meaningfully engage in other things that interest you. And if we keep moving ahead with the slides, Jory, often what people think of is this. a visual display of people together, working with animals, doing environmental projects, um, homestay families, outdoor adventure, working on farms, cultural experiences, outdoor experiences. And all of these things are true. And the reason why I only put a flash of images here is because you could either see what you want or you could not see what you want just as easily. And I want you to just be able to see an array of experiences that get you feeling kind of inspired and excited and curious. Some of the fundamental things I hear from families is they don't want to be alone. They want to be with peers. They want structure. I think it's pretty evident, even in this handful of pictures that I've selected from the last 10 years of students, maybe, that there is structure here. No one is alone. No one is out there hanging on a thread, figuring out what is it I'm here to do. You can see purpose, you can see joy, you can see connection among all these people. But if you peel back the layer, you can see more. And this would be a good time to slide ahead, please, Jory. That's not the one. We'll get there. There we go. So, yes, all those things, working with elephants, scuba diving, hanging with a homestay family, working on your Spanish, volunteering, of course, all out there. But what I see, and I will tell you with 30 years now, and probably having worked with thousands of students over that time, almost no matter what students choose to do or where they choose to go, this right here to me is what's happening on the gap year. We're talking about maybe taking a break from academics, an opportunity to explore interests in other industries that might relate to college or career, an opportunity to build your resume and job skills. Of course, have memorable adventures, taking care of mental health. Um, Traditionally, academic burnout has been the number one reported reason why students are leaning towards the gap year. But I'll tell you, since COVID, I would say mental health is quickly coming as a tie for first place. So students are really acknowledging a level of academic burnout bordering to anxiety, depression, state of the world, whatever weight students are carrying on their shoulders, they're not feeling that excited about college. And that's as good a reason as any to pause and think about what next. And again, going around the circle, I mean, this is, an opportunity to grow friendships, to grow personal and soft skills, to gain global awareness, increasing maturity and confidence, making money, learning to budget. And last but certainly not least, engaging in hands-on learning. That is what it's all about. So a gap year is not a break from learning. It is not a break from life. It is a deep dive into yourself or for your young adult, into themselves in order to grow, feel confident, feel more versed in their skills, and ready for the next step. We've tried talking about rebranding it as bridge year. We've tried all different kinds of things, a year on as opposed to year off, and not with a lot of traction or success. So gap year it is, maybe a limited framework, but that's why I wanted to spend the first 5 to 10 minutes really saying, this is really what we're talking about. The what and the where we're going to get to. But right now, if these phrases are both what are drawing you to the gap year and what you hope will be outcomes, then you're absolutely in the right place. Let's keep moving on. So I do want to just do a little bit of, I guess, myth busting because there are understandably some concerns that people arrive to this conversation with. And usually that's from doubters. We're talking about you choosing something that's a little bit less mainstream. Um, and so it's easy to feel worried. It's easy to feel isolated. It's easy to make assumptions that this isn't going to lead you to something else great. And I definitely want you to leave this presentation tonight understanding that that couldn't be further from the truth. It's not just that you're going to have a profound summer or semester or year of an experiential opportunity. It's what I call a lifelong framework, a gap year state of mind. A lifelong framework will be set in place by this time that you're gifting yourself of becoming a more curious and engaged learner, citizen, etc. Self-reported when we do annual reviews from GAP alumni, and this is a kind of a industry-wide efforts. This isn't just J2 Guides information. 98% of GAPers report annually that they've grown as a person. So that right there should just be, that should just end the doubt. If your young adult is coming home feeling like they grew as a person on a gap year, for me as a parent of a 16-year-old, great, I'm happy. Furthermore, 84% say that they've gained relevant career skills. Again, that's an incredible thing. But what's really interesting is this bottom one, and this comes from a study that was hosted by Bob Clagett, who has worked in admissions at Middlebury and Harvard, and he collaborated with a few other universities. And they followed gappers for 4 years, he and his research team. And what they found, and it was true across all the schools that participated in this study, is that gappers achieve higher GPAs. They're also more likely to graduate college in 4 years. And why is that an interesting point? The national average of a student finishing a 4 year institution is actually 6 years. So for those families who worry that a gap year is going to really impact the academic journey, you're going to lose academic momentum, you're going to forget how to study, you won't want to go to college. I have never seen that be the case with my students. So anecdotally, I have nothing to back that up. But even further, we have Bob Clagett and his team to thank for showing the research that we know to be true, which is that obviously a well-planned and intentional gap year, going back to those bubbles and all those great things that students are coming from, that's the lifelong framework. That is, yes, in addition to, a killer Instagram, account for a year and amazing photos and memories, we're talking about students coming and really ready to do the work, really ready to take all this stuff that happened out in the world and apply it into their next step in life. Okay, let's keep going. So if we were together, I would be handing you this. This is part of my brochure, and the backside is a sample worksheet. But this is great because it's too small anyway in its physical form. So the way I like to start with my clients is to begin with a few very basic questions. And the first one is really identifying your why. And when I started talking about this 15 years ago, it wasn't nearly as commonplace, but now everyone's really got it down. So why do you want to take a gap year? It's the same question I would ask my kid if they're like, I just want to go to college. Well, why do you want to go to college? It's not a challenge. It's just that we should be able to identify why we are motivated to do this thing. And I think that identifying your why is really powerful for a young adult. It will ultimately become a bit of a compass point in the heading of the gap year planning process. But it's also really showing that intentionality. I want to take a gap year because I'm feeling burnt out. I want to take a gap year because I didn't get into my top school of choice. I want to take a gap year because I got into college, but I don't really know what I want to study. There are really no wrong answers, but I'm sure as you heard me make up those three sentences right there, they sound compelling. It's easy to feel empathy to a young adult who could look you in the eye, and all you have to do is take that first half of the sentence, tack on your why to the second half, and you've now got a sentence that you can engage so many different people with in a meaningful way. I want to take a gap year because I am excited to travel the world and volunteer and have some healthy, positive relationships. I'm telling you, you fill in the blank, you just can't come up with one. I want to take a gap year because I don't know what else to do. That's an okay starting point too. But start with your why and play with it. And the other reason why it's so powerful is because you will inevitably, in your journey of exploring the gap year, come across other people who don't understand it, who want to know more. And they're going to say to you, and maybe with a little bit of a tone in their voice, well, why would you want to do that? Why would you take a gap year? So I would immediately would feel defensive if that was me on the receiving end. So if you've got your answer, you've got your elevator pitch, you can now come back to it and say, well, thanks so much for asking, Uncle Jim. I really want to take a gap year because I've worked really hard for the last 12 years. It's been a really rough time for me mentally, and I would really just like to spend time learning without the pressure of grades and gaining some new life experiences. There's nothing else to say, right? If a young adult can come with that, then all kinds of new conversations will come. So come up with your why, write down a few sentences. That's your first step. Um, Now the next is there's sort of the what and the where is what I see it as next. So this is the part where a lot of people like to start, which is where they want to go and what they want to do. And I have no problem with that. In fact, I actively encourage it. I think everyone should have a giant piece of paper with a bucket list, gap your bucket list written on top and every single thing that you want to do underneath it. Realistic or not, affordable or not, in the country or not, parents are going to agree to it or not, doesn't matter. Don't limit yourself. This activity is all about getting all of your ideas and interests down, no matter how crazy or absurd or unattainable they may seem. Um, and it's an active process. This is something that where you might be able to write your why statement in 5 minutes. Your bucket list should be something that you come back to over the next few weeks. You'll be like, oh, you're in a conversation with a friend, and you're right. I did used to love photography when I was in middle school, but I have 8 APs. I don't have time, right? A lot of things back in there in your life that you have been interested in and passionate about that probably haven't gotten as much attention the last few years. Or maybe you have honed in on a college major and feel like it would benefit you to get some hands-on experience. So maybe you know exactly what it is you want to do. Regardless, a gap year, if it is a full year that you'd be taking, is a long time when you're not in school. So there's time to do a few things. So give this process its time as well. And don't be embarrassed. Don't be shy. Don't limit yourself. Just write everything that comes to mind. Nouns, adjectives, verbs, as broad or specific as you can be. There's again no wrong answer. So your bucket list is what's next, the what's and the where's. And lastly, for my health and well-being, I need. I've talked about this quite a bit over the years, and even have already mentioned this. The suggestion that we are seeing, of course, mental health be a consistently reported reason why students are drawn to the gap year, and so that's okay. That's not going to scare anybody. It doesn't scare me. It's not going to scare a program. But understanding what you need to be healthy is really important. And practice writing it down because it will be asked of you. And that could look like everything from a food allergy, or environmental allergy, dietary restrictions, to any medications you take, professionals you might see. And so get it all out there. So again, when it gets asked of you, which it will, you are prepared to confidently share that. And I cannot underscore this enough. I, as you know from my timeline, spent 15 years in direct programming before moving in the last 15 into consulting. And in direct programming, I was responsible. I was the bottom line, 400 students out there in the field, when I was the director of a national nonprofit. And so I can't control all of the circumstances out there in the world, but I can do my best when I have a full picture of every young adult that's under my responsibility. So this is not a time to kind of hide any of those details, be forthcoming with the directors, and making sure that we are in a position, we in this field, the programs, the consultants, are in a position to support you. So could some doors close? I guess in some extreme scenarios they might, but it's only because a program has decided they can't ensure your safety on a program. And that's a very rare case. So I know what I'm really talking about here are anxiety, depression, maybe ADHD, meds that you take, therapy that you may go to. All of those things are a great place to start. And if it goes beyond that, of course, continue on that path. I think enough said. The value of being transparent, speaking openly with your family, openly with your consultant, and openly with programs. So as we go on to the next slide, you'll see how that might fill out. And it's very rough, but you can see how powerful that is because you could be like, I don't know where to begin. But if you can answer your why, if you're going to start exploring some interests like your what's and where's, and even like really confidently and happily write down some of the things you might need. In fact, this person here, I like cities, but I'm happiest in the outdoors. That's part of what they need for the health and well-being. I really kind of took it to 10. I didn't need to, but understanding who you are and what you need is part of your wellness. So this would be if you could start to kind of create some kind of manifesto of why you want to take the gap year, what you need to be well and healthy mentally and physically, and of course, the interest, skills, and goals that you have. You are off to a great start for the next level of exploring programs. If we were to go on to the next slide, here's where it starts to get even more interesting. So we've started at this kind of, I help blow the process open. I wanted to get big before it gets smaller. That gets a little scary, but we don't want to rule anything out. We don't know enough to know. So that's why doing all that brainstorming first is so valuable. And then, as I've already suggested, a year, if it's a year that you have, is a long time. How do we fill it in a way that has balance and synergy and flow? Well, one thing that J2 Guides came up with about, I don't know, we've been talking about it for 10, 15 years, is the idea of creating a progression in your gap year. And quite simply, what we want to suggest is that you think about starting your year with more structure. And if the year goes on and if it suits you, moving on to less structure. So that's gap year progression in a nutshell. But there's a lot more to it. First off, what do we even mean by structure? For me, I'm talking about a structured program with instructors and with peers. That's really key. And that's really key in the fall. As your friends are heading off to college, you too should be with a cohort. And you should get out of the house. A lot of families will say, well, we maybe only have enough money for a semester of experience, so we're going to spend a semester home working. Great. I love that. Yeah, but we're thinking fall because the fall's nicer weather here, so we'll stay home in the fall. That's where I would very respectfully challenge you and say, fall is a time to get out of the house. That is the one time where a gapper, in seeing all their friends depart, whether it's back to high school or college or work, and they're home working, is not a great fit mentally. So I really, really believe that gappers should launch in the fall. Come back and home in the winter, come back home and work in the winter or the spring. There is time in the year to work. I believe in work. Um, but I really like to see students launched in the fall. And getting back to that, so structured program with set start and end dates with peers and mentors is going to really help create an environment where both soft skills and hard skills are kind of being addressed. Soft skills are just all that stuff that parents want to see around confidence, maturity, just taking responsibility for oneself, showing up at time for meetings. That meeting right there is a meeting you probably want to be on time for, right? Students are motivated in a way that they don't quite feel as motivated sometimes with school. And if they're not showing up on time, they're going to probably get tapped on the shoulder by an instructor. That's not happening in college. No one's showing up to your dorm room if you're not showing up for classes. But you're going to learn those skills in a gap year. You'll be held to a really high standard. So let's get that locked in. And then the hard skills, well, back from our brainstorm, what did you come up with? Was it marine biology or Spanish, a business internship? What was one of those main interests that came up on your brainstorm that you want to make sure we address in the gap year? So the content is going to be spot on coming from that brainstorm of yours, and we're going to make sure there's a lot of scaffolding there so that you feel successful. From that, as we move through the year, it may be that in the winter, maybe we strip away some of the scaffolding. You've had this really profound group experience. Maybe you don't need quite as much support. And now you really want to do what I call a deep dive. Often fall programs can be a bit more generalist. They'll be focused, but it might be a tasting platter, get a little bit of a lot of things. So I see the winter as a time that can be really successful for students to dive more deeply. I still would love to see other bodies in a program, other friends, other mentors, but I think it can be a little bit looser here. Students can start to kind of maybe develop a life for themselves, maybe living in a certain town or village or city for a few months and having a bit more freedom to travel on their own or do some of their own projects. And then lastly, you get where I'm headed with this. The spring is really the optimal time for a young adult to take on the most independence. So every year when I'm walking students through this process, when I walk them through that brainstorm, inevitably almost every student talks about some interest in backpacking through Europe or woofing in New Zealand or doing a road trip in the US. Any number of things, but those really independent experiences make so much sense in the spring, right? We now have 6 months of maybe slightly more planned or structured experiences and 6 more months of getting older and more mature and more confident and more savvy. So a young adult heading out in the spring of their gap year for more independent experience makes a lot more sense. The other thing that really works with this model is you're going to pay for the structure. So the more structured, the more expensive. And so as we strip away scaffolding, we are stripping away dollar signs. And generally, like a house project, things are going to go over budget a little bit, probably. So if we've left knowing that the spring is going to be the least expensive, and oftentimes, in fact, I encourage families to think about parents maybe are helping to pay for the fall experience, fall, winter, maybe there's a split, and students are self-funding their spring. It's another great way to have students get some skin in the game and be also contributing towards their gap year. So this is a way of, and could you go back for one moment, Jory, a slide? If we had that brainstorm, that bucket list. This one is really efficient, but sometimes when I see my students, they're like, there's like hundreds of things on them. So this one makes it really easy for me because what I would tell you to do from your master bucket list is to hone in on two or three fundamental goals, and you will find them. I can nearly promise you, you'll have 100 ideas, but over time, if you just keep kind of coming back to my gap year will not be complete without, or I've always really wanted to do this, you're going to hone in on it. So let's just say this person has done that. If we come down to two or three, and Jory, will you take us back to the progression slide? Now you can see why that also makes additional sense. We've broken the year up into seasons. Your year doesn't have to be like that. This is really digestible in this way. Fall, winter, spring. Let's drop one of those core goals, or what at J2 Guides we call them your anchors. Let's drop a core goal under each trimester. Now we know we're getting after one of your goals in each section of your gap year. There's enough spaciousness that we're talking 3 months per season, more or less. So we've got real depth there, but we also have breadth. We've got some variety. And I think that is what makes a well-planned gap year so special, is that we can have that right blend of breadth and depth. We never stray away from that core goal or anchor in each trimester, but we are also being mindful of making sure they're really heavily scaffolded up front and moving towards potentially more independence or less structure as the year progresses. So we'll think about that as well in your planning. Lastly, and this is going to be my last slide before you get to hear from Zack. I want to address a few things. So first off, I mentioned, I'm not going to tell you the official definition, but this is the official definition of a gap year as stated by the Gap Year Association, which is a truly spectacular organization, and I would recommend you spend a little time on their website. A gap year is an intentional period of time devoted to personal growth and exploration through experiential learning opportunities. And I imagine by now, maybe none of us would have come up with it exactly in those words, but certainly my hope is to impress upon you that it doesn't matter where you go or what you do or how long you're there or how old you are or what your budget is. This is a moment in time, usually for a young adult between the ages of, let's say, 18 and 25, to pause on the treadmill they've been on in order to turn and face other things they have been interested in and they are desiring of growth and change. And it's largely going to be through experiential, hands-on learning opportunities. Um, okay, I hope this has really been a helpful framework. I want to run through a few things on the side here before moving over. First off, if you want to dig more deeply, I would really encourage you to start getting on the phone with people. And you can certainly get on the phone with J2 Guides. If you were to scan that QR code, it'll take you right to my calendar, and you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation to talk to me or my incredible husband and partner, Jason. And we start to kind of take some of these strategies I'm offering you and get into it for you or for your young adult. So if you're really serious about a gap year, I think it's a great idea to take us or another consultant up on a free consult. The Gap Year Association, this symbol you see next to it, that is a seal of accreditation that has been earned by a number of consultants and programs. And so that means that anyone showing this seal has gone through a very rigorous application process to show that they run ethical and risk managed programs. And so that's a great label to kind of start with if that's comfortable with you. But beyond that, the GYA or the Gap Year Association is just a great website like Go Overseas where there are programs, there's data, there's blogs, there's articles. And I think it's really important to feel connected to the greater Gap Year community. And so starting to kind of follow some of these larger associations. If you are a freshman or sophomore or junior, this is a great time to start following programs on social media. You may even create a gap year Gmail specific for the events that are coming your way. For seniors, I'm going to come back to you. But if you still have like years ahead where you're going to be getting into the gap year research, creating a gap year email just for this process so that your own inbox doesn't get inundated, but maybe a Gmail account shared by the family that you're giving out to programs, I think is a really good idea. And certainly shy of that, just following programs on social media. Again, starting to build interest. You'll see scholarships and giveaways and live webinars and reports live from the field. And again, a great way to feel connected to the gap year space. If you're a senior, now is the time to get to a gap year fair and actually start to get on the phone. It's actually time to start talking to programs. So absolutely follow programs on social media. But the next step is to really do the due diligence, to do the vetting, and to start to see if you and this program are a good fit. So, and I can always speak more to that. I get the question a lot, so I want to just quickly mention what to do about college. Um, a lot of families are curious if it makes sense to apply as a senior, apply during the gap year, reapply during the gap year. And the truth is, I've seen it all work. I've seen it all work really well. If a student is motivated and has the energy, I do believe that applying during the senior year of high school makes a lot of sense. It's the momentum, it's the energy, it's the support. Um, if you've just got a student who's just exhausted, managing something else. I've had students who had major surgeries or a loss of a parent. It was like, it's not even on the radar. It's not even on the radar for me to apply as a senior. Great. Let's plan the gap year. If that's what's making you feel excited, we're going to plan the gap year. And within the gap year time frame, we're going to make sure there's time set aside for you to do that college process. And I've seen many people do that successfully. And similarly, students who have not gotten into college that they hoped and want to reapply also can really work. So it's really very personal, but I just want to give that kind of cursory explanation. So with that, I want to pass it over to Zack because really the Gap alums are always the star of the show. So I'll mute myself, but I will be here for questions at the end.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview about kind of myself and my own gap experience, but definitely please jump into the Q&A, ask me questions. I would love to just chat with y'all, talk about anything. But while you're thinking of questions and writing things, I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself. My name is Zach. Nice to meet you all. I took a gap year back in 2020, 2021. And it was just one of the greatest years of my life. It was totally incredible and life-changing. And in the beginning, I had a lot of reasons to take a gap year. I had just finished, well, I was in the process of finishing high school and had felt like I had put a lot of time and just mental energy and all of my kind of self into school and was really looking forward to college. I was excited for college, but I was also excited to maybe not be doing that immediately all over again, even at potentially a higher level of college. And so I was just excited to just take some time off, explore my own interests, explore the world, figure out some more hobbies. I think a lot of my time in high school had been reduced to just schoolwork. I had a part-time job, I was playing sports, and I kind of wasn't even sure what are my hobbies. Like I don't know what I like to do with my free time because I have such little free time. And so I had a lot I wanted to do, a lot that I wanted to explore. And I think I was really fortunately, thanks to the help of a lot of great people, including J2 Guides, able to do so. In the fall semester, enrolled on a wilderness conservation program and traveled all around kind of the Colorado, New Mexico, or not New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona for 3 months and had an incredible time with a cohort of about 11 other students and made some friends for life, including folks that I am still in touch with today. And I had never actually spent a night outdoors before in my entire life. And then spent 90 straight nights outdoors. And it was just a totally life-altering experience. Had an incredible time with the people, but also in the places, and just felt so, so, so grateful. Then I was home for about a month over kind of the holidays and New Year's before going off to Costa Rica for another 3 months. The first half of my time in Costa Rica, I was with kind of a small program, living in a homestay, but working with other students who had also come from all over the world, to do some Spanish immersion classes and then also some kind of environmental internships that the program placed us with. So we got to explore all over Costa Rica. Really, really got to work on some of my Spanish skills, which have kind of made my Spanish to this day quite a bit better. And also was able to learn a lot of the outdoor things that I'd acquired in that first semester. Went on a ton of hikes, planned some outdoor activities with my group, and really just experienced the amazing culture, people, and nature of Costa Rica. In the second half of my 3 months in Costa Rica, I went a little bit more solo, met up with some other friends across from my gap year, and also traveled a little bit solo, working in some work exchange, worked on an organic farm, had never really farmed before, and then moved onto a farm for about 3 weeks and just got really into the food systems, had an amazing experience of, planting food, cultivating the food, picking the food, and then cooking the food and eating the food alongside the other 10 volunteers that I was at this really awesome place with. So yeah, I think just like totally diversified some of the interests that I didn't have and then also had and wanted to continue to grow. Learned so much about myself, and frankly made me so much more ready to go to school. I think I totally could have gone to college straight from high school, but then when the next fall rolled around, I was re-energized, I was re-excited, and I think I actually had a lot better of idea thanks to all these experiences that kind of nature themes, outdoors themes, climate, environment, were really where I wanted to focus my energy and ended up being an area that I took pretty seriously in my studies. So, a lot of who I am today, I think, started from my gap year, and I'm just extraordinarily grateful for all those experiences. So yeah, if you have any questions about the things I did, some of the thoughts that I had going into it, during it, afterwards, definitely pop it in the Q&A. I'd be more than happy to answer.
Can I
Um,
jump in too for a sec,
yeah,
Zach?
of course.
That was so awesome. And so I just want to say, and I'm not sure if we made it clear, but Zach was a J2 Guides, is a J2 Guides alum, a very beloved alum. And it's not an accident that you can see Zach's really took the progression to heart. So, stating his why and creating a year. Can you comment on that? Like, it seems like very obvious here, and I know I made that slide, but you did really do this progressive model. And in hindsight, was that right for you? Would you have changed it in any way?
Yeah, totally. I totally agree that that progression model worked really well for me. Um, I think so. As Jane mentioned just a little bit ago, that fall semester was probably like the most kind of tough moment because my program didn't start until about mid-September, and every single person I knew in the entire rest of my life was leaving for college in about mid-August. So there was a couple of weeks there where I was like, "Holy cow, I'm alone," and I'm just like going on walks in my town to prepare for this trip. And I was so excited to kind of get out and be out of the house and be out of my hometown for that first semester. And it was so great to do these new experiences and go to these new places and try these new things, while supported by some incredible mentors and instructors who I've seen as recently as the last couple of months, as well as these extraordinary students, who are alongside me also experiencing these new things. And I can't underscore enough how important those relationships were to my time. It was so great to have that kind of community and support. And then yeah, like a little bit less so in the next kind of the middle phase of my gap year in the winter phase, but still really, really cool people. And then the spring phase was pretty individual, and I think I grew a lot of independence and maturity in that section for sure. But what was also neat in the spring section is that I was able to meet back up with people who I had met earlier in my gap year. So folks who I met on my fall semester, who I had met earlier in other places of Costa Rica, reach back out and say, "Oh, I see you're also in Costa Rica. Let's go and hang out at the surf camp for a couple of days and surf together." So it was really great to kind of have these connections and tethers throughout my time. And by the end of it, I think if you had told me in August where I would be in terms of solo traveling in Costa Rica by the end of my gap year, I would have been shocked. So it worked out as a really strong progression. And then I can see there's a couple of questions in the chat right now. My conservation program and my Costa Rican internship. So a lot of that was definitely through the help of J2 Guides. I had, as I mentioned, not at all considered doing any sort of kind of wilderness or outdoor based program. It was not experience that I had had, but after talking with Jane and kind of talking more on a higher level about the the things that I want out of my program, particularly from a soft skill side, Jane introduced the idea of maybe doing something within the wilderness, and I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of it, but sounds cool, and it turns out to be really, really great. And then Jane also kind of helped me get into Costa Rica, introduced me to some people over there who I worked with on the ground in local communities in Costa Rica to kind of see what I was interested in, what I wanted to like get out of the internships, and match me with local partners, which was a really, really great organization. Um,
Thanks, Zach. Oh, sorry.
um,
I think it's also just really cool, and I know that we're going to start getting the questions monitored by Jory or Alyssa, but I think the other thing I want to point out is you don't even know the things that you'll learn that will be so influential. So as Zach said, he was gapping in 2020, 2021. So before COVID, the plans of travel were like way out there. So Zach really had to pivot as everyone did. And I would say the wilderness program probably wasn't your top choice at the time. But what's so crazy is like Zach has since become, I mean, I want to talk about, can you talk about what you were doing in college? Like how you took that leadership piece? Because I think that is like such an unexpected but brilliant outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I went off to school, my university had a couple of options for their orientation programs. Um, and what I knew before I took my gap year, I thought the orientation program I was going to do was going to be kind of like a research-based entrepreneurship kind of orientation program. But then after my gap year, I knew for sure that I wanted to do the wilderness-based orientation program because it was just a week of backpacking and something that I love to do, but can be hard to do if you don't have the time and the resources and kind of the energy for it. So my first week at school, I was actually doing a backpacking trip, learning the skills that I had learned on my gap semester, and also kind of having the same experience of meeting people, like bonding in the outdoors, and having these awesome, authentic, real relationships. And that program actually became one of the foundational parts of my college experience. I went on to then lead that program the following year, become some people like working kind of behind the scenes to train the instructors the next year, and then my senior year actually kind of being the director of the whole organization and overseeing this orientation process for over 100 freshmen and 30 instructors who are also students. And now today, whenever I have a long weekend or some free time, I the first thing I want to do is either get outside for a long day hike or for an overnight trip. So yeah, as Jane mentioned, this was a totally new field for me, totally something that I had not tried before, and then um, excuse me, and then has become like probably my primary hobby and one of my bigger personality traits at this point.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna try this again. Thanks, Zach, for answering that question too. We have one from somebody that asked as well, and this is Jane and Zach, whoever wants to just jump in here. But in the scenario where a student didn't get into their top choice college and wants to reapply in the fall of a gap year, how can the gap year experience be best used to strengthen their application, and any other advice in that situation? I'm sure I don't, or you might both have experience on that. So whoever wants to kind of take that, if you both want to, go for it.
Should I take that one, Zach? Yeah, I think that I just want to read it myself because I'm a visual. Um, I always want to say that, we can't bank on a gap year as the thing that's going to get us the perfect outcome with the college process. Um, but I do really think that it can benefit, and it does depend on some of the whys. I had like one student who didn't get in because she was applying to really competitive engineering programs, and they just didn't think she had enough experience. So certainly we had to really front load, and it's the summer and fall. We don't have a lot of time. So if we want to reapply, we got to bring that stuff in early. So for her, it was really getting some engineering based either coursework or internships up front and center. And so making sure that she had that to kind of showcase and report on. Um, and that really, I guess, really comes back to kind of my fundamental answer. So, reapplying in the fall can be great. If it means we want to showcase something, then we really need to get the gap time started in the summer or early fall and get a student back in time to showcase it. Sometimes students have already decided by senior year, and you could really, if you're not applying, although I guess this is a reapply, but I'm going to say it anyway. I have often found that students had some like questionable grades junior year, and then they really buckled down senior year, and their grades and GPA really shot up. If you've applied early as a senior, you won't get to showcase that. But if you apply or reapply in the fall of your gap year, you will be able to showcase your senior year. So regardless, this is a time to really buckle down and show your best from your high school transcript. And that can be another thing. But fundamentally, if a student doesn't get in the top choice, again, we would want to pick experiences that really complement the schools or aspirations that the student has. And you might also be reevaluating your school list. So I'll leave it at that for now. And you could always email me and we could chat further about that separately because it's so personal.
Thanks, Jane. Was it? And then another question that we had, can 529 funds be used for gap year programs?
I didn't know if you guys wanted to answer that, but yeah, I'm so glad someone wrote that down. Many programs can be paid for with your 529, and that's a few things worth saying. Any organization that has that Gap Year Association badge that you can see on the screen ahead of you, those programs all can issue college credit. And it goes through the Gap Year Association, and it's going to be very experiential. So there will be some coursework. It's going to be light, but it will be there. But it does mean you will be issued credits and can and that means the program can be eligible, 529 eligible. I'm not being very eloquent about it. And for instance, like on Zack's progression, those structured programs largely you will find them to be 529 eligible. And in fact, you can search on the Gap Year Association website 529 eligible programs. Subsequent experiences, volunteering or internships or woofing or help X, those things will not be. But that first round of programs, a lot that you'll see in the Airtable, I'm guessing too, will be 529 eligible.
And I can hop in really quickly just to give
Yeah.
a little bit of context about some of the coursework for those programs that accept the 529 funds. There were a couple of students on my program who were doing that, and some of their assignments were like they were just awesome. They were so cool, and it was really fun for us to talk about it and for I think for the students to do it. Like one, for example, was talking about different land management practices in rural Utah and how the different kind of land departments who each kind of have a stake or a claim to the different kind of lands are both conflicting and also working together. So it was things that were relevant to what we were doing, applicable to the conversations we already have, and just like interesting and great conversations to have.
Thanks for jumping in there, Zach. Appreciate that live example too. And we don't have any more questions in the Q&A, but I do encourage the attendees. You've got an awesome alum here, which doesn't always happen. And you've got Jane right here at your fingertips. So if there is anything else, please just throw it in there. Oh, we got one actually. So we'll pivot to this. But again, great opportunity to ask them anything. Zach, well, this could actually go to anyone, I guess, but I'm gonna ask Zach and Jane to take this one, and then we can push in there as well. But how do you find out which GAP programs are available? That's the question.
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but I think you're at the right place if it's just about programs. And I think, is that the Airtable? Is that the QR you just pulled up? So starting there, those would have been all the programs you would have met tonight. Right? Is that right? Yes. Okay. So
Yes.
that's an incredible place to start. And again, I think doing a consult with a consultant, because it's the tip of the iceberg. There's so much out there. So part of it is also going through some of your own brainstorming process first. You can go in cold and just start looking at programs, but if you can articulate the why and some of the what and where, then you've actually created your filters, which will make searching through these or searching online easier.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to add to that? Yeah.
No, I think that was great, Jane. I think that you tapping into what you're interested in, where you want to go is kind of that first step. You can browse gap year programs on our site, on this Airtable. Like again, that's something you were going to be doing tonight is meeting with exhibitors and talking to the counselors is also your best bet to parse that down because there will be I mean, there's something for everybody out there, and I truly mean that when I say that. Sometimes I'm 30 years old and I'm like, I have to go back and take 5 gap years because there are all these interesting subject areas. So it's definitely can be overwhelming, but that's where, the counselors come in and your interests really kind of meet in the middle to help you uncover what kind of programs are out there that are meant for you. Awesome. All right. As of right now, we have no more questions. And we're just about at time, but if anyone wants to pop anything in the Q&A, we'll hang out for about another minute. But just wanted to thank everybody for joining us. And we'll be sure to get this webinar uploaded and you have Jane's contact information moving forward if you want to reach out.